Welcome to the Designated Drinker Show, the podcast that's raising the bar on craft cocktails. I am your host, Louise Solis, and with me, as always, is my very, very talented friend, who is a true inspiration to us all, the mixtress, DC Gina.
Hi, Louise. How are you today?
I'm good. I want to be just like you, Gina.
You do? You want to be covered in chicken shit in Frederick County? Are you crazy?
It's chick season, and that has a whole nother meaning for you. That doesn't, the rest of us may go somewhere else with it, but it's chick season, right?
It is chick season. We have, so we're at my little farm up here in Frederick, and we got a whole bunch of little chicks that came in, and we have ducklings, and I am the mama of many, not only just to my human children, but to all of my little twerpy little friends. They're tweeting.
You got a lot of chicks in your life, huh?
I surround myself with chicks. I'm totally into it. Some would call me a foul chick, if you will. But I'd rather be foul than correct.
There you go.
All right. Sorry.
All right. Let's
bad mom joke.
I know, right off the bat. This is not a good sign.
Where's Neil? He's probably going to be psyched. He's like, she used the word foul 3 times. Great.
Oh, we don't even have the guest on the show yet.
I know,
all right,
sorry.
Let's bring it back together. Let's try to do this, okay? So, like I said, you're a true inspiration for many because of your service work. And so I looked this up in the dictionary, and I know it's hard to believe. Okay, I went to dictionary.com. Let's be honest, no one has a dictionary anymore. I think I used that before. But looked up the word service in the dictionary and being of service specifically. And what it means is being of service to something, a person, a group, a community, a cause or belief means that you've chosen to engage without expectation of anything in return.
Yeah.
And I think that especially today, in this world, in this space, really need more of this, right? In the world we live today where acceptance isn't always on the menu and it feels like we're actually losing ground, not gaining it, it's so important that we actively do what we can to be the change in the world that we want to see. We have to take it on ourselves. Activism is a must. It's not a luxury. So today's designated drinker is exactly who we need to help us understand the power we have to make an impact. Please welcome the Outreach and Communication Education Manager of HIPS, Alex Bradley. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So first, before we can get started in anything else, what the hell is HIPS?
Yeah, HIPS is, because it's such an ambiguous name, right? And there's kind of a point to that.
Yeah.
So that we can kind of fly under the radar sometimes and not always alert certain people to what we're doing. But HIPS is a service and advocacy and just kind of general harm reduction organization for a variety of folks. We prioritize people who are engaged in the sex trade, people who use drugs, and LGBTQ plus individuals. But we really serve a ton of folks, mostly anybody who we come into cross with who needs support in the way that we can give it to them. But those are the folks who kind of generally come to our door. We've been around since 1993. We have grown tremendously in the past couple of years. I am kind of in rapid correspondence with the overdose crisis that we've been seeing here in the district and across the country, but really in the district we were a little bit ahead of the curve, unfortunately, in a bad way. But we've grown to be quite a robust organization. We do the best we can. We're still small and scrappy in the way we deliver things. You can only grow so quickly, so fast. But we have a syringe service program for folks who use drugs, overdose prevention services. We do safer sex education and supply distribution for anybody who needs it. We have a gender-affirming care clinic, HIV and hepatitis C clinic.
Wow.
And we also provide kind of referrals and navigation for things like MAT, housing, non-medical case management. Wow. As well as a drop-in center that does, daily needs like food and clothing and things like that.
So that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. So And thank you. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But let's back up just a little
Yeah.
bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You, from when we spoke the other day, and correct me if I'm wrong, and please do so. I am often. You started volunteering there in 1993?
Oh, goodness, no. That's when we started.
No, you started. No, 1993, you would have been like 2. Good Lord.
A little older, but. I started in 2015.
Yes.
But we've been around since 93.
93. Yeah, HIPS has been around since 93.
Yes.
So what drew you there?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I've always been, as I've grown older, it has honed in my understanding that like service and community needs to start as local as possible. And so I think when a lot of times when you're young and you grow up in certain contexts, like there's these ideas of, you got to do things at the national level and it's big, got to be big and you got to do that, everything at once. And the older I got and the more connected to support networks and community and care that I got, the clearer it became how hyper-local was actually like far more important and impactful. And like the only way we can make those bigger changes, in fact, is by starting at home and in community.
There's even greater meaning in that. You start with at home, literally yourself.
At home. Yeah, exactly. And with your own like community and network. So I really wanted to find a space that both was had my values, shared my belief systems, and also was hyper-local and took care of like very directly in your backyard. And so, I had worked for a couple of like, national organizations, felt very every nonprofit is in some way like a little bit affected by the nonprofit industrial complex, but the further down you get and the closer to the ground you get and the more rooted in community you get, the more distance you can get from some of those toxic structures. And I actually was volunteering for the DC Rape Crisis Center in 2011 when HIPS crossed my path. We were getting trained on how to provide support for people who are engaging in sex work, because we do get calls. People are sexually assaulted all the time who are doing sex work. And so we would get a lot of calls to that hotline. And so they came into training and I was not quite like old enough, quite ready yet, quite enmeshed enough in the DC community. I had moved here in 2011 and that was when I was doing that training. So I was like, I need some time before I have the level of experience and connection that I need. But I was like, put a pin in that place. And then once I got my feet wet and kind of was more connected to the community, I really dove in 2015 and was like, okay, it's time. And like I can say my entire life shifted because of getting to HIPS in 2015. Like it went from, me being very like isolated and not having like a strong friend group here and not having a strong community of my own to now pretty much everybody in my life and community is somehow related to the HIPS sphere, whether it's folks who receive services there, including myself, folks who work there, including myself, folks who volunteer, which is my past. So I've really tried to it's been, for a lot of us, this is not just my story. I think this is probably like 2/3 of the HIPS staff or volunteer community is that we find a mutual community like there. And that's how that's why we're so committed to it, because it is our community. We are the people we serve.
Yeah.
So
it's more family.
It is. Which has its, challenges, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
No, okay. All family, whether you're born into it or not, there's problems in there. There's going to be drama.
Or you chose them.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a lot of chosen family thanks to HIPS.
Yeah. The ones you were born with, you don't get much choice in that matter, do you? So
sometimes you meet the friends too that you don't, you become like, this person's so annoying to me, but I can't not be a part of their life.
Yep.
So I'm a bartender, right, Alex?
Yes.
That's what I did. I had where you have a community of like, your services you do.
Yes.
I feel like the bartenders run community as well.
Yes.
Especially when you have like what they call regulars.
Yep.
And like you are so fucking involved in their lives and you don't even know if you didn't even like choose that. You work at a place and you're like involved. Like everything that's going on.
Nope.
So
Same.
I hear you.
So it's
Feels the
fun.
same at hips.
So it's funny you say that, Janine. You know me. You know my normal places that I go to. Just the other day, it was funny as I was bringing something up, and the bartender was talking about, like, oh yeah, you mean when you did X X X and X, and I was like, oh, I did tell you, and you remembered. Like I didn't remember telling them, but they totally recapped the story that I told them.
That's
I was
so
like,
funny.
they definitely know me,
Yep.
and they're my family. So
I've worked service industry. I feel that, Gina.
But it's true. I think that that's something that very, very, very basic is where you gather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your community is where you gather.
Yes,
Whether
absolutely.
it's you go to a bar, you're a gym, you go to the gym, you go to, I don't know, a park on 14th, I don't know, wherever you gather.
I go to a bar
your
next
community.
to a gym. Does that count?
Yeah, that counts. That's what I tell myself too. I'm like, this bar is right across the street from the bakery. I feel great about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. I'm more looking for the dispensary bakery term. I'm like, oh, this dispensary next to this bakery, that sounds fucking great to me. Anyway, sorry. I shouldn't say that. I should say that.
Genius business. That's genius entrepreneurship is what it is. And you should know both places.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right?
So as the outreach manager, it seems like a pretty daunting task.
It can be. Yeah.
What does that mean? So you have a lot of people that don't know that means. What does that mean? You're an outreach manager. Go.
What
does that mean?
So outreach is anything that kind of exists beyond the four walls of our brick and mortar building. A lot of service organizations, nonprofits have a place where people can go, a center, something like that. But a kind of core tenet of harm reduction as a philosophy and as a way of providing service is meeting people where they are, and we take that quite literally. So we actually have a couple of different ways we do that. We have a mobile van that goes out and does deliveries. We do rolling outreach, by which I mean we're literally riding down the street, stopping when people flag us down or scream hips at my window. My window is always open. We have street outreach, which is going to locations where we know people congregate and just going there and stopping the car and getting out and getting folks what they need and talking to them and having conversations, which has looked so many different ways over the years. I mean, I've sat around campfires with folks and, it's whatever folks need, whatever we can do. Where that gets tricky is the line kind of gets blurry about when your job begins and ends. Because anytime somebody sees you, they're like, it's Hibbs. And I'm like, I actually live here, but okay, hello, let's go. But it's one of the really beautiful things about being on outreach is how much you become ideally you are, how much there is nesting within the community and just becoming a part of people's lives, people's communities, people's mutual support systems. We also do the other piece of outreach beyond kind of the direct service portion is we do a lot of community education. So that means a lot of different things. It means we have a very, very robust training for our own staff and volunteers. It's about 40 plus hours that folks go through to do direct service work at HIPS. But we adapt a lot of those trainings for the public as well. So we do things like overdose prevention and naloxone trainings. We do gender 101 trainings. A lot of folks are trying to have more cultural competency around gender and sexuality. So we've done a lot of those. We do harm reduction 101 trainings. What the heck is harm reduction? How do I incorporate it into my medical practice or any number of other things? So that's it's a big bucket. We share a lot with advocacy as well. We do have an advocacy team that is technically separate, but we all bleed over a lot into each other. And I think one of the beautiful things about pairing the way advocacy and outreach kind of work hand in hand is that HIPS really values one of the tenets of harm reduction, which is centering client or community voices. And that looks like having almost all of our staff be people who are former, current community members, clients, people who are represented by the groups we serve. But it also looks like us really, really, really tapping into the greater community that we serve in order to get like feedback on what we should be fighting for. So like that looked like having a drug user union that exists at HIPS and like meets or did meet fairly regularly before COVID, and we're reintroducing that now as we start to be able to meet outside and do things. We have a sex workers advocacy coalition, SWAC, which like organizes folks. We fought for the decriminalization of drug paraphernalia in DC and won. We're currently fighting for the decrim of sex work and drug possession. So, I mean, it's a comprehensive place, which means a lot of us are doing a lot of things at any given time, but there is kind of a natural symbiotic relationship between advocacy and outreach because we do the intel work and go talk to people and bring that back to the advocacy team and say, here's what people are saying, or here's what we heard, or here are the things that people need. And that can look like, when we draft a bill, it looks like, we can't just be doing decrim. We need to also be talking about 24-hour harm reduction centers because folks need services 24/7, or we need overdose prevention sites so that folks have a safe place to go, or we need, a 24-hour center for folks to go and prepare for a night out and like doing dates and getting, any number of things that we've talked to folks in the community about. And every service that we have has been informed by the community. We didn't have a gender affirming hormone and care clinic a couple of years ago. That happened because there was a need. And the community was like, we have a need. Can you help us? And HIPS is always like, we'll try. And then we just overwork ourselves and figure it out. But we figure it out. And now we have this incredible opportunity for folks to get their care at HIPS. And it looks, as someone in that clinic, it looks so different when it's by and for people who are really invested in making sure that you're taken care of and supported in ways that not everyone else is. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that answered.
No,
that was a lot.
That's a lot, but it's amazing. It's amazing what you offer, and as you were laying it out, it also seems like it's if somebody is looking to figure out how maybe they can give back. It seems like of all levels of you went to grad school. Mm-hmm. There is a place for somebody out of grad school who can donate their time and their expertise and their bank of knowledge and talents. And then there's also places for people who don't, who are in a different place altogether that are talking about the need base. It's so vast is what I'm saying, is there's so much room for just about anybody to be able to give.
Absolutely. And we need everyone at the table. We absolutely need everyone at the table because we need most importantly, to center the community we serve, most specifically. But then we also need allies, we need folks in the broader community because we can't do it ourselves. And the more we have to concentrate all that work into just us versus building out a network that can advocate in ways that we can't or get listened to, unfortunately, in ways that we don't often. Yes. I mean, we don't show up the way that a lot of other folks do.
But the work that you do, it seems like it's an organization for, and I'm saying this not making it flippant, but in the opposite, there's a lot of opportunity to give. There's a lot of opportunity where you could find a place that if you have a talent or a specialty or you have some expertise in something, there's a lot of space that could ask for your need.
I think a lot of what I've found is a lot of folks who have come through HIPS, either even volunteer, peer, staff, any nature, is someone who in some way feels like they're giving back because of something they already received from HIPS or from the broader community. I would say most of us have said that at some point, that we just felt like we needed to return to the community what has been given to us, because a lot of us found our way because of this very specific community. And it makes HIPS a unique place. I don't know that a lot of workplaces are like that, but it also blurs the line, right? It blurs your boundaries a little bit, but it is a very special place in that way.
I bet.
Don't you think you have to though, you have to almost erase those lines in order to understand what other people are going through?
Exactly.
There's no way that you can walk into there with this definitive and see what that's like.
Exactly.
I truly believe Alex, is in the decriminalization and also making it legal for sex workers. And I feel like that would give people a safe place to perform their service that people want, because otherwise, if no one wanted it, that it would not have anybody buying it, right?
Exactly.
And give them a safe space in order to receive the care that they need, just like everybody else. Insurance, and with that goes the other things too, taxes and all the things. So on that note, I'm gonna give you my service. Here we go.
Oh,
my
right.
service. I'm gonna give you a tip.
Yes.
Okay, so we were talking about garnishing your cocktails, right? So what do we have today? We're gonna do like a little layering effect with your lemons and your strawberries and a little bit of pepper. And I really wanted to talk to you about this because like I go to a lot of places and I see like the lemons cut like all crazy. And this is really how you do it, right? So garnishes will call for different things. They'll say, okay, I need a wheel. Well, this is what a wheel is in a cocktail recipe. It is legitimately what that sounds like, is one wheel. The wheel should be thick enough to hold, not flimsy enough, and you can give it a little cut. And if you want to and get really, really fancy, you can dig out the little seeds in there and really make it a better experience. And when you have a wheel, you have a little lip, and then it sits on your glass like so. When you're cutting a garnish for like, say, like, a strawberry, you have a couple of different ways to do it, and it is berry season, so this is very relative information. You will cut it in half, and you can cut it down the center, and then you kind of want to like show the inside because it's like the best part of it. So we showed you how to make that wheel, right? Well, that's another way to use that wheel. Well, when you're making a cocktail that calls for a layering effect or muddled, is when you take your lemon and you'll put it in the bottom of your glass, and you'll take like something like a strawberry, and you'll cut it the same, where you try to cut it the same width as the lemon, and you put it inside of your glass on the same way. You're gonna put it in sideways, great, add your ice, muddle it, however you're gonna do it. But what you're looking for in your garnish game and how to do the drink is that everything is kind of somewhat, even though they're not shaped the same, they are the same width, and that way it'll give you the same amount of juice, and you can make the cocktail a little bit more exceptional. So there you go. You got a little strawberry lemon sandwich. And that's how you use a wheel. Basically, garde-manger work. That's also like sex, but that's sex in the kitchen. So when you have really sexy garnish, that really makes you like a hot commodity.
It's true.
Okay, there we go. Because sex sells. Okay.
It's true. Hey, don't I know
it? All right. Gina, where are they going to go to get all these tips and tricks?
You're going to go to Designated Drinker Show for your tips, tricks, and how-tos, and how not to cut yourself.
Okay, that's all important. That's very, very important because I like all my digits. So, Alex, as we bring part one to a close, can you just leave our listeners just one little snippet about why they should serve?
That's a good question. I almost would say how. I think it's about how to serve. I mean, there are ways to show up for service in all different capacities, for all different kinds of things to believe in. I would say how is start in your community, start close to home, because I think we lose track of our own, the way we maybe even just like ignoring our own surroundings, our own networks right by us, and get so lost in the big picture that we miss the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
So I think service starts with something that is meaningful to you. Service means having an understanding of where and how you are finding ways to tap into your strengths and the things that you can provide that the community actually needs. Sometimes we, in our excitement to do service, start throwing things out there that people never asked for. And instead of really connecting in and asking questions and doing those deep conversations to figure out, like, what do people actually need? Or what is missing? Or how can I specifically show up in a way that's helpful? And I don't mean that to be like, you're not doing it right or whatever, but we all bring something different to the table. Tap into the things that you are passionate about, that you are good at, that you have like deep care for and skills for, and then ask the questions. What do you actually need? Because we just want to make sure that we're showing up productively, showing up in ways that are going to be mutually supportive. And the more that we talk to each other and communicate, the better we can do that.
Absolutely.
And one last thing I will say is service is not a one-way act. And it's not a thing that we should show up thinking that we're some kind of like white knight or savior or martyr or anything like that. If you're in a position where you think only you're providing a service, but you're not part of a community that provides service to each other, you might want to take a step back. Because then we might be coming from a dangerous place where we see ourselves as separate from the community or separate from the people we are serving, versus in community with people and meeting each other's needs and providing support to each other.
Yeah, I think to that point, to add, just hearing you speak brings me to the fact that give where your heart is, because then you're giving honestly and graciously and with truth and love, as opposed to superficial, see me do this thing.
Exactly.
Wonderful. That's a great way to close part 1 of this episode with Alex Bradley. But again, if you're anything like Gina and I, we never just have one round. So top off that drink and get ready to check out part 2 of this episode as we continue our boozy banter about celebrating pride, diversity, and acceptance. And Gina's going to serve up yet another pride-worthy Alex this time inspired cocktail recipe in part 2.
Love it.
Cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
The Designated Drinker Show is produced by Missing Link, a podcast media company that is dedicated to connecting people to intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Also in the Missing Link lineup of podcasts is Rodger That, a podcast dedicated to guiding you through the haze of dementia, led by skilled caregivers Bobbi and Mike Carducci. Now, if you're looking for a whole new way to enjoy the theater, check out Between Acts, an immersive audio theater podcast experience. Each episode takes you on a spellbinding journey through the works of newfound playwrights, from dramas to comedies and everything in between. Find Missing Link's League of Podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please don't forget to subscribe, download, and review the shows. Your review helps our shows reach new audiences. To find out more about Missing Link, visit missinglink.company. That's missinglink.company.